Welcome to the Giving Room with Dave and David, where we encourage remarkable generosity, from amazing stories to easy to understand discussions about tools for giving that may just be right for you.
Hey, welcome to the Giving Room. My name's Dave.
I'm David.
And today we have two special guests with us. We have Tori and David.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, and that's three Daves in the room, which is a lot. But
that's like at least one too many. You could leave.
I can leave. Yeah,
maybe.
No. So over the years, we've heard these conversations. Everyone talks about millennials and Gen Z and this next generation. And as the two resident older guys in this room, I'm glad I included me in that.
Appreciate that.
Help you feel better there.
Yes.
As one of the two resident old guys in the room, I thought it'd be fun to bring in a millennial and a Gen Z, both who have demonstrated generosity in their lives. And I thought it'd be fun to just talk to them, hear their stories, and kind of get their perspective about giving. So pull up a chair, join us here in the Giving Room. So before we dive in, though, want to first a little bit hear who you are and why we should talk to you. So we'll start with you, Tori.
Yeah, so life's been a little bit complicated for me, so there's been a couple detours, but I'm actually freshly graduated from college, so I can definitely give the broke college student perspective on generosity, because that's the running joke. College students are usually broke, and that's usually true. So everyone's like, how can I be generous when I'm in this stage of life or just out of that stage of life? But primarily I'm now a communications consultant for Giving Design. I had a communications degree, and I've also published a book in my past. So that's kind of who I am. And I just grew up in a very kind of generous family. So I've gotten to see that modeled by kind of both my grandpas. And so then I've just been able to attempt my best to implement that in my life, even in the broke college student years.
And then on the TV screen here, David, thankfully calling in from North Carolina. He actually lives just down the road from us here, but happened to be on vacation and was willing to join us in. David,
which is generous, by the way.
Generosity, right. David, tell us a little bit about you.
Well, yeah, I'd say that just gives me such a generous personality, right? That I can give some of my vacation time to talk about generosity. I would say the thing that has stood out to me in my life, I've just been the recipient of so much giving before that it has softened heart towards the generosity personality mindset. And I've now am starting to get into a season where that's more of the conversations I need to have. So I was in advertising sales for 6 years, and then God radically changed my life and has put me into church ministry direction. And so now I'm a pastor in training at a church in Columbus. But it's weird. You go from asking people for money and providing something in return, and now you're leading an organization that is dependent on donations and dependent on generosity. And then in like mind, his mission is to be about generosity towards the community. So it's been an interesting journey, and I've learned a lot in a short amount of time. And I'm grateful that you guys invited me to talk about it.
Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, so as you kind of dive in, I'm going to throw kind of questions at each of you, or maybe just see who wants it first. But first, I guess we want to just dive into at your stage of life, to you personally, like what does it mean to be generous? I'm going to start with you, Tori.
That's hard. Such a big question. What does it mean to be generous? I think it does look different for everyone else, but it starts with a mindset. You have to be really intentional, I think, to be generous in life. Even when you say, okay, I don't really have that much money, it's something you still have to be thinking about, and it's something you can plan for. And I think being generous for this current stage of life, when you don't have a lot of income, looks like a couple different things. It looks like planning ahead and saying, okay, when my income does increase and I have more of a living ability, I'm not going to increase my living standards so much that it negates my ability to give and to be generous. And I think it depends on each individual. There's some people who aren't giving anything right now. And so their first step is probably to tithe. That looks like generosity for them. Or maybe to volunteer their time if they don't even have anything to give others. But the first step, probably tithing, right? And then once you're consistently tithing, it's planning to go beyond that. And then if you're truly in the I'm a broke college student. I can pay my bills and that's about all I got. You know, sometimes generosity is like, I have a $20 bill that is unaccounted for in my life. It's not going to bills. It's not going to, feed me. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. So you can keep that aside and set that aside and say, I'm going to give this to someone else. And so I think generosity is putting others before yourself, and primarily in the financial aspect, but then also you have being generous with your time, like David is on his vacation. He's giving his vacation to help equip other people instead of for himself. So, and with that, we'll see, what's generosity mean to him?
Yeah, I completely agree with you there, Tori. If you're not generous with what you do have, whether it's finances, time, talents, attention, then you're not going to be generous with anything else or be generous on grand scales. Like generosity for me started with my brother and having a license before him and driving him to places and dropping him off at sports practices or running to get ice cream. And it, then morphed into, oh yeah, I got your lunch or I got your coffee today. Don't worry about it. And you look back and then go, oh wow, generosity has become a habit. It's become ingrained in who I am, or it's a posture that I've adopted. And I think that's true across generations. It's that mindset and a habit that you develop with practice, and doesn't require as much gifting as I think we fear it requires. I can't, because I don't have a gift of generosity. Generosity is a posture and a mindset that you adopt.
I think that's great. So you're actually saying that you can learn. This is something you can learn. And then Victoria, I think you said something that you have to be intentional about. And then also what I heard, you both said it doesn't matter. Sometimes you think generosity, so there's like a bunch of zeros on that, which assume there's a bunch of zeros. And you both said that's not the case. 20, which could be a lot, right? For some people, $20 is a lot of money, but may not be in the grand scheme of things. And then, even just taking your brother somewhere. So I think sometimes we're thinking, well, that's generosity. So that's a far off thing. That's for a philanthropist to do. That's not for me to do. And that's why we, at least in the giving room, we don't even use that word. Philanthropist is sort of a dirty word. We refer to generosity instead. And I think you guys kind of nailed it as far as thinking that it's something that is relevant to where you are and anybody can do it, but they probably have to think about it, plan for it, and sort of get in the habit.
One of the things we talked about on a different podcast that we were guests on that we've never actually talked about in this podcast was your philosophy of teaching generosity with parking tips and 20s.
Yeah.
Which, just real simple. And that is park far away as a way to be generous to someone so they can park close.
Right.
Whatever you tip, just tip a little bit more. Or keep a 20, like Tori was clearly talking about here, is a way to learn and be generous. If you keep one in your wallet when someone asks, you're always prepared to give. So the 3 simple steps that you can do, that anyone can do for the most part, to learn in generosity. So, however, I was curious, David, you've also done some financial peace stuff in the past on debt. And I remember talking to a college student about generosity one time, and they said, well, right now, I am worth negative $50,000. I'm not comfortable tithing money that really isn't even mine. And would be just curious for you as you think about, for a lot of our young people today, they're graduating with more debt than their parents did. They're just barely trying to survive at that level. In your mind, what does generosity look like in that context?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it goes back to what mindset and attitude you have towards being generous. Because if you can't be generous when you are negative $50,000 net worth, then you're not going to be generous when you're positive $50,000 or more. It'll obviously look different for different people in how they apply their finances. But my wife and I were in the same boat when we graduated college and didn't have 2 nickels to rub together our first year of marriage. But that didn't stop us from being generous and giving to our church, giving to missions overseas, things that we were passionate about. And, ultimately it boils down to, how do you treat what comes in? It's a good perspective to have of, I can't be comfortable tithing with something that I don't necessarily have. But in the same vein, you're stewarding whatever resources you're given, whatever time you're given, whatever attention you're given. And I think a big part of stewardship and a big part of generosity is learning full what you have. Later, you can be faithful more.
Yeah. And you just said a sort of a big word. You mentioned stewardship, and that's, I don't know, maybe Victoria, you can even tell us, like, so what does that mean? I'm a steward. So if I'm a steward, I'm not an owner. Like, what's that?
Yeah. So I think I love actually what David touched on, because the thing is, as much as when she said, like, I don't want to be, tithing or because it's not my money. And I'm like, you're right. It's not your money. It's actually God's. And we forget that a lot. We think it's, ours to do with as we please. It's actually not yours to begin with. You don't own it, any of it. None of us do. And so I think keeping that accurate mindset of this is not mine in the first place. And then the second piece that goes with it is the Lord commands us to tithe. So also just from that perspective, you're supposed to, and he loves a cheerful giver. So you do it cheerfully. And then you trust him to provide. And if it is his in the first place, then you can give it away as well. And he commands us, to tithe that first fruits, regardless of anything, right? What you owe to someone else, what your income is, what anything is. And that's already trying to start instilling kind of that generosity and that stewardship like David talked about. And what you mentioned is this isn't ours. We don't own it.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
One of the things we found with the advent of like social media and things is the ability to kind of, I don't know if the word is fake generosity, but to really stand up for things or support things without actually really supporting things.
Maybe it's leveraging. We're leveraging.
Right.
We're leveraging our generosity.
Sure. Yeah. Or for that matter, we've seen even on the corporate side of things, businesses trying to help you feel generous through buying, hey, if you buy this here, you can roll up the last few pennies and that'll go to charity. Or if you buy these shoes, they'll donate a pair of shoes. Tom's, of course, again, there's a positives and negatives to that. But one of the negatives that's out there is people trading generosity for these things. And I know a lot of that's been targeting the younger generations. And we've seen that in many ways, philanthropy has changed a little bit from just giving donations directly to charities to all of these different social good type things. And so just curious to kind of get your perspective on, for either one of you, you can fight over the question, but on all of that and what that looks like as a young person who may still be generous, but just give in a different way than what charities have been used to in the past.
Yeah, I think
I'll jump on that one first. Yeah. Go ahead, Tori.
No, go for it.
David.
I regularly purchase or I do the roundup at stores when offered, but it really goes back to having a posture of generosity. So, I'm totally fine to do that because it's only a few cents more, and I want supportive and in a position to be able to share with what I'm stewarding and what I've been given to steward. But I don't think anyone is intentional. The young people that I talk to and work with, they want to be hands-on, hands in the dirt with their giving and with their generosity. And the personal invitation to be involved in the work that you are giving towards has way more meaning and impact. So, some of this socially influenced generosity that you're talking about, Dave, it really is more of a marketing thing or orchestrated forced giving than it is the intentional. And I see a lot of people in my stage of life excited about being personally involved and don't see that as generosity, and not necessarily something that we need to move towards, but instead are working on the hands-on, hands in the dirt kind of side to generosity.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think David had mentioned there that it's definitely can end up like a marketing ploy sometimes. So I think just like he would say, it's not inherently this terrible thing like that to round up or whatever. But I think I'd be careful because some people, they're just trying to say it to, we're a green company, so, buy from us. But there are some companies that they started the company with the idea of, I'm going to make money for this cause. That's my intentionality. Or I love this product, this thing, and I love this cause, so I'm going to merge them together. And so I think you can, an example, there's a lot of coffee brands out there now that give to different organizations, whether that's a pro-life organization or something else, because the person who started the company loved making coffee, but they're like, I love this cause as well. So I'm going to merge these two things. And so I think there are companies out there doing it well, but I think more so than not, it's used as this ploy to buy our stuff. But what is really interesting about Gen Z and millennials is they really want to make a difference and they want to know they're making a difference. And I think that marketing ploy or the roundup makes us they're like, that's like a fake pat on the back. Like, you did it. Yay. Or I think a lot of Gen Z and millennials you talk to, they're like, no, like, give me the shovel. I'll get down in the dirt with you. I'll be in the trenches with you. Like, I want to do the work. And so I think that's a great way for organizations to invite Gen Z and millennials in, especially if you're talking about college students who are like, look, I don't have money, but like, I got time. It's relative for college students too, but like, I'll get in the trenches. I'll volunteer at your organization. So generosity can even look like that and be a good start of a partnership.
Good. That's good.
I'll give an example there if I can. We have a ministry that's reaching out to schools through our church, and the partnership started out an increased thing, and before we knew it, not only were we having the opportunity to teach students about Jesus during school hours, but we are now holding the offices and having a very close ties to this organization in our church building, in classrooms and spaces that we weren't using Monday through Friday. And one of the things that came up as an opportunity to partner and support them is buying a coffee that would then go back into the organization. So we could have done that without having a personal relationship with our ministry partner, but because we had such a hands-on shoulder-to-shoulder partnership, it made natural sense to, let's start for Sunday mornings purchasing this coffee that a little bit goes back to the organization too. So that it's more of a full circle effect as opposed to a one-off or a forced thing.
Great. And so if I could summarize a little bit, and that is, there are a lot of these social enterprises. There's a lot of different opportunities that you can get involved in. And if I'm going to buy coffee anyway, if I'm going to buy shoes anyway, if I'm going to, why not support a cause while I do it? But at the same time, beware of replacing generosity with that. It's not the same as being intentional. It's not the same as being specific in the causes that you're passionate about, getting involved, getting hands. And it sounds to me like for both of you, you're looking for places that want more than a check from you, that want more than money from you, that they want you. They want you to be involved in the cause, and that you guys are actively interested in that. You want to be more invested than just writing a check. Not that you guys know what checks are. Than just sending.
They're way too young for checks.
Sorry, that's old man lingo. More invested than Venmoing and Apple paying your donation.
Well, I thought it was interesting. You both kind of talked about how it's almost an entry point, but it can also be a compliment, right? So in the case of the organization that Dave's church is working with, there's already relationships there, so it sort of makes sense. So they weren't trying to we're going to do this coffee thing, and that's our support. It was, we already support them, and this coffee thing is just a compliment. Like it's not going to even come to the same level of the other support, but it just makes sense, and it really complements what they're doing. And in their context, it's actually giving you stories to tell, right? Like, this is a reason, this is how we tell the rest of the folks in the seats about what we're doing Monday through Friday, which is fantastic. And you both mentioned really that invitation to do more. Victoria, you said, give me a shovel and I'll be with you. So I don't think, it sounds, this is a good report, right? This is a good report for the old people to hear. It's not to replace generosity, but it is sort of a gateway to more, or a complement, something that just adds to what's already there. And I think that's exciting. I heard you both say your generations like to be involved. Do you feel like there's opportunities for you to be involved in the organizations you're around, or you sometimes feel like, I could do more if somebody would let me do more, or if these old people would just, get out of the way, or is that relevant for you guys?
I think it depends on the organization is what I'm going to say.
That's a safe answer.
Because I've So my church, right? They're great. They want you to get involved and to volunteer in whatever capacity possible. And your age is not going to hinder that. And I think that's awesome because Paul writes to Timothy and says, don't let your age hinder you, right? And so there are a lot of organizations with this good idea of like young people can still do great things and they'll have ways for people to serve. But I think a decent amount of organizations do fall short in that area of saying, here is a way you can serve and be a part of our ministry and partner with us. And I think that could be a way of improving, is finding the ways that an organization can put out and say, hey, we need volunteers for this, whatever it is, the specific thing. But David may have had a different experience.
Well, you're exactly right. And something that I've seen organizations struggle with is specifically naming what we can be involved with and give towards. I'm still happy to give money, but it's not missional for me to give to the general fund and not know what's happening with that money. It is missional when I get to give to the youth trip to go overseas, or I get to give to this particular outreach, or even in more practical sense, if our church needs a new sound system or needs to repair the HVAC unit, and there's a specific ask, a specific intention, that's way more missional for me to give towards. And so I think some of the hard work that organizations need to put in is being willing to let go of the safety or the convenience of giving towards the general fund and not speaking to the specifics of what the money's used for, and making very specific asks. You're not going to have every donor engage on that front, but you're going to capture the attention and the intentionality of the donor that wants to partner with you in that sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think he said something in there that's really interesting about Gen Z and millennials is they care a lot about joining the story. And that's one way they can. I've seen one organization do this really well, and that's actually Covenant Care Adoptions. So when they have, say, one of their birth moms that they're going to try and put through college, because that's a really cool thing they do. They'll put up a list on Amazon and say, these are the items we need to put her through. So can you go help us purchase these items? And then you bought those items and you actually got to help this person go to school and go to college and get a degree or something like that. And it's so cool.
I've seen those lists, and it's usually hours and they're gone. It's not like it takes 2 weeks to fulfill this, wish list to help with mom finished college. It's like it just happens. So it seems that bears that out. There's an attraction to that. I know if I do this thing, this payoff, this life change is going to happen, and that's motivating. It sounds like that's very motivating to the two of you.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Very.
And obviously, there are some organizations that are much better at that than others. And there are some organizations where that's a whole lot easier to do than others.
Right.
Yes.
I think is one of the challenges. Though, interestingly, too, we talk a lot about that, too, in the large donation category. When you're asking for thousands of dollars, sure, that seems pretty easy for an organization to do. But when you kind of dive into those smaller dollar amounts, it gets a lot harder to think through sometimes. I know, because I'm thinking about that right now, because I'm sitting in a podcast studio that was a specific ask that I gave to a donor once, and he wrote the check. Actually, he used his donor advised fund. Anyway, but to point to that point out is people are motivated by specifics, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong. One of the things I hear all the time about the younger generation is that you guys have grown up in a world full of the internet, where half of everything you see, if not more, is fake. And so the meter of authenticity is actually much sharper in many, many ways when you're looking at these marketing ploys or these different things that charities use. Would you agree with that? Or I'd love to hear your thoughts. David, you're nodding your head vigorously. Let me hear that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I think a lot of us as in leadership of these kinds of organizations that are reliant on people's generosity, we are afraid to share some of like the overhead expectations, because the reality is it's not exciting to ask somebody to keep the lights on. But because what I see from people in Tori and I's stage of life, if we're passionate about what the organization is doing and we're being invited to partner in the mission, we will absolutely, Venmo or donate online because we can't write checks, to cover things like an HVAC repair or to keep the lights on or to pay the lease or rent bill that month, because that there is an invitation of authenticity into that. The more transparent we are as organizations, the more realistic we are about what the specific needs financially and otherwise for the organization, the more ways young people have actually engage and be generous with what we have. And that's why I think it required that mindset shift of what we're willing to talk about or how creative we are willing to be in order to invite different paths and avenues to give through those specific asks.
Yeah, I definitely can back that authenticity piece. Like, that's the thing of our generation, right? Almost to its detriment is authenticity. But it can be a really good thing. And I think organizations can learn a lot of, you don't really have to put on this salesman kind of thing to pitch us that you need money, especially to Gen Z and millennials. Like, they care about, are you telling me the truth? Like, are you being authentic? Or are you kind of hiding behind this veil? And so I think that matters a lot to Gen Z and millennials. And as far as being able to kind of tell, they're kind of putting this on, they're kind of faking, or like, no, this is them being honest with their needs. And like you said, yeah, we'll pay if you need the lights to stay on, like, tell us, just tell us you need the lights to stay on. Don't weave it into this some, strange kind of narrative that's not it's only part of the truth. Millennial Gen Z don't dig that. We don't dig that.
It's actually kind of terrifying to hear this because, we actually did a whole episode earlier on in the podcast called The Overhead Myth, because for years, everything has always been, don't touch the overhead, get the overhead down as low as possible. No one wants to hear about that stuff. That's like, they only want, and now you guys are saying the opposite. And like, we're okay with that. Just be real with us. And it's just funny because that's a fundamental shift in many ways from what every charity I'm aware of talks about, if that makes sense. But
yeah, I think that's true. And I think what I've even heard from the two of you is all those pieces matter, right? So I'm assuming, because some of the overhead myth came from people, well, I need to know that my money did this thing. Mm-hmm. And they forgot that it took people that had to like pay their own rent, and feed their own children to do that thing. And like, they just wanted to, my money has to go to this. Well, there's a lot of people to get to that outcome. But I think what's great about your generation, and I've just heard this, I want to know if you two agree, you care about the people that are doing the work, right? You're like, well, like, let's try to pay them, let's do right by them so that they can produce this outcome. Let's not, make, all my donation has to go to this outcome, forgetting that it took people to do it in the first place. So I actually think that's super encouraging. If that's true, if that's what you guys, it sounds like it.
It just means a lot of change in the way we do marketing and talk about giving and moving forward.
Yeah, I think definitely like what you had talked about specifically for caring for the other people who are in this ministry aspect. And I can't speak for every portion of the generation, right? We say generation, we're expecting every single person to be that way. But for the vast majority, I mean, we're the generations of the quote unquote living wage, and we're the generations of wanting people to be able to care for their family and have a job, and so there are definitely in Gen Z and millennials just intrinsically this drive of, yeah, we want people to be able to work and do these good things, but we want them to be able to live too. And so I think for those that can kind of see, when they finally get past their own selfishness and you do go to be generous and you've made this habit, you're like, yeah, I'll keep the lights on because then you get your job, and you can keep doing these good things, but without it, you can't. So I think sometimes they can kind of get in that mindset a little bit easier than some other generations. And I have seen that with Gen Z and millennials caring about people. That's the other thing, is they care about people. So
awesome. Well, this has been a fun conversation. I guess as we kind of wrap things up here, David, is there anything else you'd want to just share with us as we think about this, as we talk to young people, or anything you'd want to share with other young people like you that maybe you're like, hey, these are things you should be thinking about when you think of generosity?
Well, it's connected to how we open this conversation is you have got to be generous where you're at in life. There's no waiting to be generous. And organizational leaders that are dependent on generosity need to be creative to help onboard people, to give them avenues to engage. If you're constantly expecting large donations, the college student with negative $50,000 net worth isn't going to buy into that. But if you're providing an outlet for them to engage and them to practice generosity and learn generosity from you, then you have a lifelong, have somebody that is adopting a posture and mindset of generosity. And that's ultimately like the greatest place in life to be. Other people love generous people, and it's more of a learned skill than a gifting. And organizations can provide that opportunity to learn that skill.
Yeah, that's really good. There's some words of wisdom and maybe some both heartburn and opportunity there for a lot of organizations.
Any last thoughts, Tori, for us?
Yeah, I think for young adults, one of the things I would say to start your generosity journey, be interruptible. That's something one of my pastors always said a lot, is be interruptible. And if you're willing to be interruptible with your time, that transfers into donations and giving and money. And I think my other encouragement for young adults, as far as that goes, giving, nonprofits don't just want your money. They use your money to live, but you can partner with them. And sometimes you can help them figure out how to partner with you. But also just giving money is okay. I think that's actually my message to the generation, since we are so burning passion of, I want to get in the trenches and I want to do these things. But even if your schedule doesn't allow it, just giving financially is an okay thing to do. And it's a good thing to do. And it's not just you saying, I'm going to sign this check and do whatever, to get this kind of feeling to go away. Paul says giving is joining. So if you give, it's accredited to you in heaven. And so it's okay to just give financially. You don't have to be in the trenches if you can't, if something's keeping you from that. And I think sometimes younger people can feel like, well, this is just a cop-out. It's not to just give to an organization. And like David mentioned again, it's intentionality and it's a training. You're not just, it's not just something that you intrinsically have. It's doing it step by step and starting with the little things, starting with tithe and going from there and growing from there.
Well, again, thank you both for being here on the podcast with us today, kind of giving us some insight into generosity. And I love that. And thank you for listening today, for being part of this episode with us and helping us kind of dig into the mindset here. A couple of things as I think about it, I kind of summarize. It's not enough to just to ask. You need to be more specific in your ask. You need to be more authentic in your ask. But also all of these gimmicks and tricks and things we do, they're going to see through them. So you want to make sure you're thinking of that. But also for young people, building and growing a mindset of generosity. And that's not just young people. That's all of us. We need to be better at using what we have, what God has given us, to be generous with that. That really is what it all comes down to. It's being intentional to give what you have. And I like what Tori said too. You can't be in all the trenches. You're going to have to pick some trenches and some maybe you give to, but you can't do all of the things. So, and that's okay. You don't have to do all the things. What's important is that you build a lifestyle of generosity and that you get involved in something. And so thank you again. It's been awesome to be here.
Well, yeah, I think the future is bright, right? I think that's what we hear is the future's bright. Doesn't mean it's the same as it was, for my generation, right? Things are different. And that's positive, I think. But I'm just grateful that you all could come, both be there virtually and be here in the room, in the giving room with us. Appreciate that so much. And hopefully folks learn something and other folks can relate to where you are as well. So
thank you for hanging out with us in the giving room today and for pulling up a chair and joining us. Please make sure you subscribe wherever you're listening to this so you make sure you get all the updated episodes of the Giving Room podcast. Again, I'm Dave.
I'm David.
Tori and David. It's been awesome hanging out with you here in the Giving Room.
The Giving Room podcast is brought to you by Giving Design LLC, where we help ministries and their donors utilize planned giving to change the world. Go to givingdesign.com to learn more. As always, a huge thank you to River Radio Ministries for sponsoring and producing this podcast. Go to riverradio.com to listen or learn more.